Welcome to Carpool Conversations, where our goal is to help equip parents to have meaningful, Christ-centered conversations with their kids. I'm Amy Lowe.
And I am Emily Alters, and today we will be learning some lessons from empty nesters.
Yes, Emily is here with us today, stepping in as a co-host for a very special reason that you are about to find out. But thank you, Emily, for doing this. We're excited to learn from some empty nesters. I love it when we get to do this, when we sit down with parents who have successfully launched their kids out into adulthood so that we can learn from them and pick their brains about things that they did well and also about things they now look back on and think, you know, maybe that wasn't as important as I thought it was. They just have a unique perspective that I don't have yet because I'm very much in the thick of parenting with teenagers, and most of our listeners are that way. So I hope that this conversation brings some perspective and some wisdom just from people that have done it really, really well. And I'm excited to learn and take some good notes today. And we have two WinShape legendary parents with us. So no ordinary parents over here. WinShape legends here with us. We have Jeff Stryker and Lynn Alters. So welcome, both of you guys. And I'm going to let Emily do a little bio and tell us who these friends are.
Yes. So Jeff, he was born in Wilmington, Ohio, left in 1983 to attend Asbury University. Am I saying that right? Asbury?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
perfect. He received a bachelor's degree in accounting and business management, graduating in 1987. Jeff met his wife, Barbara, also at Asbury University. They were married in 1986, moved to Virginia, where Jeff worked for a public accounting firm. They returned to Kentucky and have made their home there since 1988. Jeff joined Chick-fil-A in 1992 and is the owner-operator of 2 Chick-fil-A restaurants in Lexington, so another connection there. He and Barbara have raised 7 children, ranging in ages from 33 to the youngest at 19. Wow. Their children began attending WinShape Camps in 2004, and all except 3 eldest children attended 11 years. They are expecting their first grandchild in May and are officially empty nesters. He is an active member of First Alliance Church in Lexington, and when not in his stores, Jeff enjoys farming, hunting, historical movies, reading, and rooting for Ohio State, the University of Kentucky, Dallas Cowboys, and the Bengals. Big sports guy.
Ohio State.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ohio State, we had a good year.
It was your year. Dallas
It
Cowboys.
was our year.
Dallas Cowboys, not so much.
No, it's been a bad couple of decades there.
Yeah. I'm married to a Dallas Cowboy fan, so I feel it with you.
You feel the pain.
We're in this together, Jeff.
That's right.
Yeah, your fandom spreads across many states, though, I see. So
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not loyal just to one state.
Yeah, all right. So now we're on to my mom's introduction, as a matter of fact. So Lynn was born in Austell, Georgia, attended Southern Tech in Marietta, Georgia, where she received a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering technology and a master's in quality assurance. Lynn has worked in the Atlanta healthcare market since early in her career as a project manager and data analyst. She met her husband, my dad, Terry, in a singles adult ministry at Peachtree Presbyterian in Atlanta and married in 1995. It's a shame I'm having to read from this, but it's okay. They have 2 daughters, Emily and Kelly, and moved to Cartersville, Georgia in 1999, where they raised their children and are active members at Sam Jones Methodist Church.
Yay, that's so fun.
Great mom. That's why she's here.
Great mom. That's right. Yeah, and you maybe learned some things about dates and stuff that maybe you didn't know about when your parents met and stuff.
Right.
I know.
I need to write these down.
So these parents, we know because their kids have worked camp for years, and some are working like Emily and some of Jeff's kids in our office and just on our camp teams. Now, those kids aren't perfect, but they sure seem to be on the right track, loving Jesus, serving him in their lives. And as they are past the season of being in the thick of parenting, we want to just pick their brains and learn from them on what they did right and wrong to And so that's what we're going to do today. So I'd love, again, we kind of teed it up with a little bit of where your kids are now, but I'd love to just take a little step into that more. But tell us about your kids. What are they up to now? What are they doing? And we'll let Jeff go first.
Yeah, Peter, our oldest, is 33, and he works with us at our Chick-fil-A restaurants here in Lexington. Annika, our oldest daughter, is 31. She is married to Blake, our son-in-law. They actually live in Alpharetta, Georgia. They're just in the suburbs of Atlanta. She teaches third grade in Alpharetta. Stefan, our 29-year-old, got his PhD at Duke and founded a medical device company. Really going to try to put a dent into cancer. So he's got a pretty revolutionary cancer detection system. And then Sasha is the one there, 26, very soon to be 27 this month, works for WinShape Camps. They're at the support center. Our next daughter, Katrina, is 24, and she is also a third grade teacher, but she actually returned to her elementary school she attended as a kid. So in Wilmore, Kentucky, she teaches third grade. And then Shane, our youngest boy, is 23, and he is now getting his master's at the University of Glasgow in Scotland. So that's exciting. One of my wife's great-grandfathers graduated from there. And so we're excited for him. And then our youngest, Kirsten, is 19, and she's a freshman at Berry College there in Rome, Georgia.
Wow. So do y'all get to go to Glasgow to visit quite a bit?
We because that's a great thing about being new empty nesters. Kirsten went off as a freshman to Berry, so we just took Shane to Scotland. And her mom is Scottish, so there's relatives over there. We visited them, dropped him off, and I rented a car, drove on the wrong side of the road and the wrong side of the car, all around Scotland. And so we got to spend some really good time there this summer.
That's such a beautiful place. Wow, your kids are doing so good. Way to go, Jeff. Yeah. Y'all did something right. Lynn, tell us about yours.
Sure. Emily, who's here already in front of you, she's my oldest and 27 years old. Went to University of Georgia, got a business with a marketing I don't think it's a minor, it's just a concentration in marketing in the business school, and works here at WinShape in marketing. My youngest is Kelly, she's 25. She went to Berry College and got her nursing degree, works for Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, serving in a really special area. She works in the inpatient rehab area, somewhat like what we call our Shepherd Spinal Center here. So a lot of long-term patients that are healing, and parents are learning to take care of them. So, and both of them attend church together in Atlanta, and that's at the Passion City Church in Atlanta, and they tend together, which is a wonderful thing to know that my girls get to connect, and it's all around their faith and their spirituality. So keeping them going like we did as children. So.
Right. So I gave my mom's introduction and she gave mine. So fun. All right. So on to the next question. So what was your connection to camp originally? How long did you send your kids to camp, and how has camp been a part of their faith journey? Jeff, I know I touched on it in your introduction, but do you want to speak on that a little bit more?
Yeah, being a part of Chick-fil-A, I became a Chick-fil-A operator in 92. So my first day with Chick-fil-A happened to be at Camp WinShape there at Berry College. They were sending all the operators through the ropes course, and so my team was going through there. So that was before I even learned how to make a Chick-fil-A sandwich. That was my first day, which was kind of crazy. Wow. So instantly I kind of connected with the campus, and we were staying in the cabins of the boys' camp. And so I got familiar with that they had this camp, and we never had sent our kids to there. And a lot of Chick-fil-A families were just talking about how awesome it was. So we finally decided to give it a try. And it was actually Stefan, our third born. It was the first year he was eligible to go as a camper is when we sent them. So Annika and Peter were in the older tribes at the time, so all of our kids, but two actually went through every year of camp that they could go. So we sent them to camp, and they just absolutely loved it. a matter of fact, later on, there was a time where, we used to do big family vacations and then also send them to camp, and kind of had a budgetary issue with, we had to make some cuts. We asked the kids, okay, do you want to do a big family vacation or camp? And it was like overwhelmingly camp, so the annual family vacation went away for a couple of years, but the camp was something we were going to prioritize. It was such a key part of their faith journey, and so significant.
Yeah. Oh, I feel that.
My turn?
Yes. Yours.
So about the same time, Jeff, you were sending your kids to camp. I had a nephew that started working at camp, and that gave me an idea. I was a working mom who always was struggling looking for places to put my children during the summer where they were taken care of. They had some form of enrichment, but mostly importantly that it tied with the way that we parented and places that we felt like they would grow. And so when my nephew started working at WinShape, and it was so close to our home, about 45 minutes away, I started getting a little idea and corralled some of my friends to send their daughters as well. And so Emily started as soon as she could. She was at the youngest age group and started, and then her sister, after that was a true success. I mean, what a pleasure to send them to camp and find out what a blessing it was to our family. We sent our second one, and from that point, they stayed as long as they could until they got kicked out. My youngest one even moved camps to stay with a cousin because she had aged out at Berry and moved to Cohutta Springs because she could go after graduation there. And it was really, they had a ball at that camp too. So, but it became such a part of our family that, we even said we were WinShapers. It just becomes a part of who you are as a family. And it really became part of what we would call kind of our little village that took care of our kids and really put together a package of life for them that really, I think, solidified their faith journey in so many ways.
So were you able to find other moms and people that are in your area that y'all would go to camp together?
Well, it really was friends of mine from college that we were raising our daughters together already, and they were bonded, and this was such a great way to keep them connected. So 2 of my sorority sisters from college sent their daughters, and beyond that, it grew. It became their cousins. It became friends of ours from Peachtree, where we had met, married late like we did, and started carrying their kids to camp. And before you know it, we probably could. And then they brought friends. It was probably 30 or 40 people were impacted by it, and it was just such an important part of what we did that it became a no-brainer for us. We just signed up again and kept going.
And kind of like what you were saying, Jeff, I know my mom actually served when they were camp moms. And she said that it was so important for us and a part of our faith journey that you made sacrifices to be able to financially afford to send the 2 of us to camp. I know my grandpa funded a couple of our summers, but that it was like such an important investment in us. So
He did.
Yeah.
And Camp Mom was fun.
Yeah.
It got me away from the computer for a bit, so it was great.
Yeah. Well, and I think so often, obviously we all love camp around this room, but I think so many people think, oh, camp is just like a place to send the kids where they're going to be taken care of and have fun. But you don't realize what faith building moments happen at camp until you get them back and you pick them up on that Friday, and you start to have conversations about what the Lord did in and through them. And then, of course, it makes you want to send them back because of the impact that camp can have. And not just WinShape. Any Jesus-loving camp is going to be that way for your kids. So I love that y'all took that investment seriously.
And the joy that it brought. Joy became kind of my whole message about WinShape, was that our kids learned that the joy in Christ was so profound at camp, and that being a Christian was fun.
Yeah.
And that's so much a part of it, because sometimes even going to church on Sunday can become a bore to a young kid if they don't have the right people surrounding them, right? And so we want it to be joyful, and that's what camp brought to their life, I think.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. What, for each of y'all, what are 1 or 2 things that you did right, so you can brag on yourself, that you did right looking back that really seemed to stick with your kids when it comes to owning their faith. So, Jeff, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, touching on what Emily or Lynn just said about one of the important aspects of camp is that it's fun. It's fun to be a Christian, and you can. It's not just boring and stodgy. One of the things I was always passionate about is having a home where, and Sasha, you mentioned Sasha's getting ready for a big event. We like to throw parties at our house. You have an Easter egg hunt. We don't just have an Easter egg hunt. We have a epic Easter egg hunt. We don't just have fireworks at 4th of July. We have fireworks at 4th of July. So, we always wanted to be the home that people enjoyed coming to, and it may, they could see us living out our faith in real time. And I just wanted that for my kids. So that wasn't even one of the things I was going to share, but I heard Lynn talking, and that was always something passionate about our family. And I think that was significant for our kids. Just being that home where everybody loved to come to and have the parties at our house and live life. Right. So that's important. I would say one of the key things, about especially with 7, we have 7 in our household. So you've got the whole identity of being in the Stryker clan, right? And so one of the things camp did was gave them a chance to be just them in their tribe. They were still there with their siblings, but they were in their group and kind of learning to live faith independently with kids their own age. And so that same thing through a couple of other aspects of life was so important to us. So one, with kids, all of a sudden, we're not really choosing where we want to go to church based on what we like or our needs. The focus was always what's the best church for our kids to be in.
Right.
That was top concern. It had to be a Bible believing church where when they went to their individual things at that church, they were really having to learn how to live out their faith individually. And along with that was school. We started all of our kids out at a great Christian school locally. And, our kind of plan was to just keep them there. And one of the things that, I'm always wanting to be cautious of is sometimes I think parents will send their kids to a Christian school and think, check that off the list. They're good. They're safe. Right. And one of the things is even at a great Christian school, the kids still have to make their own choices. And this school, just like any other, they could make bad choices and have groups of friends and people that would encourage them in those bad choices. So when we bought our farm, it was going to be in the school district, local school district. And there's a lot of influence from Asbury community, Christian community, in that public school. And so we switched all of our kids over to the public school. And it's, kind of the reverse. It isn't a Christian school, but there's a core group of people, both kids and administrators and teachers. They could, again, make the right choice, right? That's something as a parent, you would love to just be able to make choices for them and micromanage, but you can't, right?
Yeah.
But I want to put them in a position where they have the ability to make the right choice and be supported in that. So, Camp WinShape did that. The churches we selected did that. And then the school system, both the Christian school they were at, and then when we got them into the public school. Now, Annika, our daughter, when we switched them, she was a 8th grader, I believe. And she was like, Mom, can I stay at the Christian school? And so we let her stay. Everybody else moved. And so she did middle school there. And then she came to Barb the next year and said, I think God is asking me to be brave, and so I'll go to the public school. So she went to the public high school. And I remember a conversation that she had, with my wife, after she made that move about how, her friends would get together and they would pray before they ate, and she goes, we never did that at the Christian school, but at this public school, they would, pray before they ate. And so I think those are important. And then just me personally trying to live out my faith in front of them. One of the things I did I'm on about my 25th year, kind of my standard thing is I read through the 1-year Bible every year. So every morning I just get up and read that day's passage. So just having the kids see that example, I think, is important without being pushy or without pushing it on them, just living it out in front of them. So.
Jeff, that's so good. All of those are such great thoughts. Lynn, what would you add to that?
Well, absolutely, the active involvement in a church and finding the right youth group for your. We were in a smaller Presbyterian church. We knew a pastor that when we moved to Cartersville from the church we married in, and so it was easy to get connected in somewhere where you're comfortable with the people. But as our kids get older, we realized that we had very few their age at that church. So we sought out the right church for our children, just as you said, Jeff, you did. And that's such an important part of it. But being an active member of the church so that your children see you serving, while you're there worshiping, that you're not just hitting the worship service. I got involved as much as I could. And I was a working mom, so I wanted to be involved in the things my kids were involved in. So I wasn't away from them any more than I already was. So I was always trying to teach a Sunday school class for the kids or be in a room where they were when I could, but not over the top. So I wasn't there all the time, just enough so they could see us serving. That was one. And then to me, and Jeff, I'm sure your family did this, but you have so many kids. Family dinners at the table are something that I know a lot of people don't regularly have. But that ritual for us was so important because we connected, we got in conversations we would have never had if we just were all going different directions. And so family dinners were really a strong part of us. We sat down at the table and we had some hard times. We were playing all kind of games just to try and get manners across the table. We had a penny point system and things you could earn, and we had all kind of crazy stuff we'd do. And it almost became a fun little challenge for the kids, to not make a mistake. But, did they learn from it? I still sometimes think, I thought we taught them how to eat,
Not you, Emily.
Not you.
Right.
Not you. Absolutely not. But anyway, we used that time. And the other one Emily brought up and reminded me of is modeling forgiveness and how important that was. Because even when they would get in trouble, I'd send them to their room. Emily said she knew that if she was up there for long, I would be coming in the room. And that I went to them and said, I'm sorry that you're upset. But you have to learn something here. And, that my forgiveness was there, that I came to them. They didn't have to come to me, and that we could have that conversation sitting on their bed while they were still upset. And those kind of things, I didn't even think about that one, but Emily brought that one up to me because I used these questions with my children when I wasn't quite certain on the best responses. But those are the things.
And I think at times it was like I would sit up there and be like, well, at some point she's going to come apologize for something, and so I'm going to win. But really, years down the road, I feel like it taught me how to apologize. And even though she wasn't apologizing for everything, I was probably in the wrong. But it taught me that there's always something to apologize for.
Yeah. And sometimes
it's a small thing, but I feel like it did teach me the power of forgiveness and saying I'm sorry. So
That's great.
Love it.
You're speaking my love language on teaching the kids how to eat. That's another thing we did.
Oh, my goodness.
With 7, family dinners, you're right, very important. My wife, great cook, and big deal. We usually had home-cooked meals, but when we went out to eat, that was quite an adventure. And one of the things my wife would do before we went into the restaurant is okay, what are the restaurant rules? And each kid would have to list off rules that we were going to follow in the restaurant. And we always prayed in public. That's the other thing, living out our faith. Even if we were in those restaurant settings and a large family, would always pray for our meal. And it was always amazing how many, when the kids were little, we don't get it anymore because we're all adults, but when they were little, how many people would come by and stop by the table and tell us how impressed they were and how much they appreciated us, our kids being well behaved, and that we prayed for our food. And it was always amazing to see that response in public.
Yeah. So on to the flip side of things. What are 1 or 2 things that you didn't feel like you did right or didn't turn out well, or maybe mistakes that you made And how might you encourage our listeners to not make the same mistakes?
Okay. Well, with 7 kids, mistakes, they're not, you can't,
They're unavoidable.
the mistakes don't apply to all of them, right? So I'd have a bunch of stories I'd have to tell to cover all of them with all 7 kids, right? And one of the things I always joked about is you're going to need something to talk to your therapist about someday. So,
Right.
I'm just helping you out, right? So I kind of took this question as like big picture of what did I do or didn't do that might have been good. And one of the things that I always was kind of impressed by and saw other families do, and we really never did. And I'm like, man, should we have done those things? And one is devotions as a family. There's a lot of families that'll literally have family devotions. We never really did that, or family service projects, or doing short-term family missions. We never really did that. Now, my kind of cop-out excuse is we have 7, and the age ranges are so wide, and it was just kind of a different dynamic. But is that just a cop-out? Was that something we could have done better at? That would probably be the biggest thing, other than individually, I could tell you a lot of mistakes, or we could get Sasha on here and she could list off several for me. but just that kind of big picture thing that I saw other families do, and I thought that's really cool, that we just never really did. Yeah. And time flies, and if you don't make it a priority, it'll get past you.
Yeah, that's a good one.
My turn. That was a tough question for me. And I called my children, Jeff, and I said, okay, I can think of all kinds of things, but, what's your opinion on it? And Emily did give me some good perspective on it. I will speak back to what you said about devotions. Recently, I was thinking about that because I listened to the podcast with Angela Fielder, and what a beautiful exercise of, with 4 children. It's a lot to do, but they do have Sunday night devotions. And I thought, wow, why didn't we do that and have a regular cadence? We could have done it as a part of those meals. But at our family, maybe it's a part of just having a family ritual where you do pray together. And so not to slap myself too many times about it, because we did have one, but I do think that idea is a wonderful one, and maybe my children will pick that up for their families. But, both my daughters are so different. Parenting them, they needed a little bit of a different strategy. And, the one thing that parenting, your parenting style and your parenting journey can go along really well until they have keys to a car. And the game changes totally, And so I think that what we feel like we didn't do was we did not probably think about that far enough in advance and think about asking other parents, how did you set guidelines? How did you know where they could go and who they could be with? And even though we did have locations on phones at that point in time, you still don't know who they're with. You might know where they are, but you don't know who they're with. And but we were trying to balance teaching them to make wise choices and giving them room to make some of those choices and maybe make some mistakes at the same time. But, Emily, when we were talking about this, Emily made a really good point that we probably, in hindsight, didn't take enough time that when mistakes were made, especially in those young teen years and those teenage driving years, to have a conversation about allowing them to tell us why that decision was bad and how that could hurt them for the future, rather than us telling them why the decision was bad. They almost need to learn how that decision could impact them and be able to vocalize it. And I didn't think about that till Emily brought that up yesterday or this morning. I can't remember which one it was, but I think that it was a really good perspective on those. But also, that she does feel like being able to make those choices helped her to make choices as she got into college a little bit more, rather than us making all the decisions for her. So.
Okay, we're getting close to the end. This is our last question for y'all. And Lynn, and both of y'all have already helped me with this question, but I would love any more thoughts you have. What piece of advice would you give our parents listening who are still in the middle of raising their kids?
Yeah, I have a very unique perspective. After Barb and I got married and graduated college, what we did in the church as far as volunteering is we were youth counselors. And then I taught middle school, Sunday school for 10 years. I did that until my oldest was going to be a middle schooler. And I wanted him to not, again, him owning his faith, I wanted him to not have to have dad be his teacher. So that's when I quit that. And that's also when we kind of stepped back from being youth counselors. And so I got to see parents with these teenage kids coming into the youth group, and had a lot of experience with seeing it from an outsider's perspective. Yeah, I was engaged in the kids' lives, but I wasn't a parent, or a parent of that age child. And you realize how quick that time goes. And the parents come in and they are exhausted. They've been raising these kids and they've got a lot going on, maybe still have younger kids, maybe older kids, and they're in the thick of life with careers. And they're just kind of trudging through. And it got to the point where I realized they had no idea how fast this is going to go.
Yeah.
So to take advantage of every minute, you're in the thick of it, but it's the important things in life, so dig in and enjoy this time with the kids. And also, once they get in that pipeline of middle school, high school, your influence has greatly waned. Whether you like it or not, they are going to be making their own choices. I mean, I could try to be domineering and control it, but it's not their choices. That would be futile anyways. You have to figure out how to help them make great choices, because they are doing it anyways. They're going to make their own choices. And it's like shooting them out of a rocket. It almost seemed like, from the time they entered youth group till when they were off at college, it just is a blink of the eye. So my encouragement to parents is, enjoy it. You realize it's going to go really quick. And so put the important things in first.
So good. Soak it in,
Right.
soak it up.
Yep. So true.
Yep.
One thing I've heard so many times is how much better it is for your children to make mistakes at home.
Yeah.
And that they learn from those rather than make them for the first times outside of the home. And I think that's so true, because sometimes we can almost, what the term is helicopter parenting. I never wanted to be one of those, but that was a term that was very popular. But rather than to prepare them for life outside. And then the other one I would say, and I've given this to so many other moms, and they've loved it because I think they have to have permission. You have permission to stay in their business all the time. And I said, not in a smothering way, but in a way, I was trying to word this right, but in a way where your children know that you are aware and that you care about the details of their life. And I think that's what puts it together, is that you do care about the details. And sometimes parents are busy. I was a working mom. Both of us worked. And it's easy to get tied up in your work. But we were fortunate that we were able to navigate our careers in a way that one of us was always at or near the home anytime they showed up at home after school. So, and then prioritizing your faith in a way that gives them the understanding of what a high priority it is to your family, and hopefully it will be to them, and that they're looking for somewhere to center their faith when they walk away from home as well. So,
yeah, so good.
Yes. So that was our last question. And this has been so much fun interviewing a friend of mine's dad and my own mom. So, yes,
well,
thank you.
Sasha can give you the real scoop after this.
Yeah. I'll have to ask her. But thank you so much for joining us, Jeff and Lynn. We always end this with a question for our listeners to then take to their kids and really apply this topic or whatever they learned in their own families. So our questions for the day are kind of taking these questions and then asking those to your kids. We've talked before about getting a report card from your kids, checking in with them with how they think you're doing as a parent, which can probably be intimidating. But what is something, here's the first one, what is something we are doing well as parents? And then on the flip side, what is something I could work on or I should do better as a parent? It was difficult to answer these for my mom and giving her feedback, but it was really insightful to think about. So and could give you some good advice. So thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure.
This has been fun.
Thanks, y'all, and thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.